So the first thing we need to do is turn the power on. The power is located under this metal thing right here. So let's go ahead and press that, and we'll be greeted with a welcome screen and so forth, a little splash screen, and then we'll take it from there. Now we're on the main splash screen where you have a choice of selecting demos and stuff like that. If you want to check those out, that's fine, but I want you to press the empty project button right here. So let's press on this touch screen, and now we're on the main screen. The main screen has a couple of functions that I want you to get familiar with. Now over here at the left side, you can see the grid, you can see the track, you can see the step sequencer, and then the XY effects. But let's go back to the home part of the screen, and then we need to understand these concepts. On a sequence, you have tracks and programs. So that is different towards every sequence that you move to. By default though, you will have your BPM on your sequence part of your main screen where you can set the BPM. So right now I'm going to go ahead and set the BPM up for success. Let's just start with a track that is about, let's say 70. We'll adjust later. And then you can set the bars. Where it says 2 bars, you can set it to 4 bars. Let's go ahead and set it to 4 bars. You can also transpose the whole entire track through here, and then you have a pencil sign which leads to more stuff that we will talk about later. You can also name your sequence too by tapping that part of the screen right here. You see this right here? This is where you can find out where you can name the track or whatnot. That is one of the things that I wanted to focus on. And then now you have the track part of your main screen where you have different programs. So what are the different programs? So by default, you'll be on the drum program, then you have the plugins program, then you have the key group program, then you have the clip program, the MIDI program, and the CBN gate program, which we'll all get into in this masterclass. You can also transpose a track instead of the whole entire sequence itself. And this record button right here, that means that you can record into that track. Make sure that it's on or on auto at least. You can name your tracks, of course, which we'll do during this masterclass. You can also have a bunch of options that we will go through a little bit later. Now we have drum programs, or the program side of the part. So we're on the drum program. You would select your program. Sometimes what people do is they stay on the same program. We'll talk more about that flow. You can warp samples, assign samples, and edit samples within the drum program. That does change depending on what you select. So I want you to be mindful of that. The bit of a wrap of the main screen itself. And of course, in programs, you have options that will change depending on which type of program that you're on. One thing that I want you to know about is timing correct, because timing correct is located on the screen too. You can choose to have global timing correct on or off. If you want to quantize or unquantize, that's what timing correct means. And you have different time divisions that affects how the quantize works when it is turned on. And you can also do triplets, and you can see that things have shifted over because it is on triplets now. So those are things that you want to keep in mind there. You have the different type, start, end, length, legato, and then you have where you can change it from all to selected, range, and so forth. You also have swing, where you can set up swing if you want to make swing on your beats. By default, it's on 50 because that's just no swing at all. You can shift timing. Basically, what that will do is it will put stuff a little faster or behind the grid or in front of the grid, depending on if you're negative or positive. 0 is at neutral. That is timing correct in a nutshell. And then you can also turn on your metronome over here, where you can have it on count in, on record. You can change the level of it and enable it. You can do it on play, play, record, record and play, however you want it. Right now it's off for a reason. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into sequencing. You can change the rate of it and the MPC click sound, which is the classic sound, to shakers, claps, side sticks, and so forth. These are the couple of features that you have in here. I'll keep it on MPC click. And if you want to route your metronome, you can route your metronome here. So you have multiple outs on your MPC. We'll just keep it on out 1 and 2 so we can hear it while we're making a beat. Now that we understand the main screen, let's talk about browsing and finding samples so that you can start a project. So on the MPC X, you have a dedicated browse button. So just hit your browse button. I will assume that you have added all your new content to your MPC that When you register your MPC X, you get more content. You can go to expansions. But if you're looking for your own samples, you will have to go to places. You would select either your SD card, because I have an SD card entered in here. And then I will click on this and I can browse using this data wheel right here. If you want to select any of your folders outside of using this data wheel, well, you can use this cursor to navigate as well on the MPC X, which is a great way, a great throwback to the older MPCs. If you want to get inside of any of your folders of your SD card, then you would just press the right arrow on this cursor here, and then you're able to go and hear sounds that you have in that folder due to the auditioning that you have right here. If you want to select the sound, of course, the main thing that you would do is press this middle button, which is the enter button, and it will load that sample up. If you want to get out of a folder, then you either hit the left cursor or you can hit this folder sign right here, and then it will take you out of the folder that you were in previously. So let's go to content, and we're going to select the drums that come with the MPC. One of the main things that you could do to speed up the process if you are looking for a certain kind of program or certain things, which let's go ahead and talk about right now. Let's go ahead and just type in trap. So if you want trap drums, then you will see a whole bunch of trap drums that you can go through, and you can select with the browser right here. You can tap on it, or you can use the data wheel. Let's turn down the volume a little bit so you can hear me. And speaking of which, if you don't want to hear a preview, you would hit addition right here, and you can turn auto off. You can also lower the volume of the previews just in case you want to hear the previews but they're too loud. You can hear that it is lower. You can also sync it to the project or warp it as well. Just be careful anytime that you're loading anything up. If you think something is playing a little different, that might be the problem. So let's go ahead and just raise the volume back up to normal. There you go. What we're gonna do is go back into the browser for proof of concept, and then we'll type in hip hop. So if we type in hip hop, boom, we have hip hop kits. If we type in dance, then we'll have dance kits if they are available. Here are some dance kits and so forth. So always look for stuff using this shortcut, because that will come in handy if you want to speed up the workflow a little bit. So we're going to go back into trap, and then we're going to pick out a kit. Go on here. I like that one. So we'll just we're going to hit load, and that will load up that program. Now that process is done, one of the things I want to talk about are these different icons over here so that you understand what's going on. So if you don't see the programs, it's because you don't have programs selected. You have multitude of things that you can select. Like for example, if I hit this sign right here, it will pull up every individual file. While if I hit this waveform, then it will pull up nothing but wave files. And if there were any plugins in here or any presets, then this plug sign would pull that up. That plug icon will pull that up. If there's sequences in here that you want to pull up sequences, then you would select that if you want that, or just programs, but we're just gonna go and rock with that. If you don't want trap stuff to be pulled up, then you need to hit this X sign so that you can see everything. And that's basically it for selecting and browsing. Once you're done with that, I want you to get into the habit of hitting this main button right here, because it will take you back to your main screen. Now I think it's about time that we lay down a drum line. So now that we're on the main screen again, the first thing we need to do is name a track. So let's go ahead and name this track drums so that we can keep up with this later. Then we'll select a program, because if I was to hit the pads or anything like that, there would be no sound. So let's select that program, and now we have the trap kit in front of us. What I want you to do is play with the pads, and you can see where the sounds are coming from. Just experiment with them. So that's a good starting point here. Now the next thing I want you to do is let's try to record it. Remember, we set up a BPM earlier. So what if we want to change the BPM? One of the main things you could do, and I want you to get into the habit of, is just doing record and play start. And once you press play start, you'll hear a metronome click. So let's go ahead and do that again. I'm going to turn the volume up this time, and you can hear it. So that is your count. And so we're at 74 BPM. What we want to do is just increase it. Let's go ahead and increase it to about 90, and let's hear that. See, now it's faster. In order to record this, one of the main things I want you to get into the habit of is using these cue links over here. As we go through this course, you'll get more familiar or affirmated with these cue links. So the main thing that we have over here is this bottom 4 row right here, which immediately affects the main screen. The first one is the program level. So if I adjust it, then you hear that the volume is going higher and lower, and so forth. If we mess with the playhead, it messes with the playhead. You can see it being represented right over here. And we just reset it to the very beginning. We can turn on metronome enabled, and you can do on record. So we'll turn the metronome so it will stay constant while we're recording. And then the last one is the metronome level. Just in case you cannot hear the metronome click or anything like that, you can turn it up with this cue link right here. Now we need to go ahead and begin, and we'll talk about the main thing with setting up. That is just making a drum line. No stress or anything like that. The first thing, let's go into time correct. Let's see that timing correct is on, because we're going to utilize that. If you have to set it up, just make sure that you set it up. Now let's press record and play start. And as you can hear, it has laid itself out, and now you don't have to worry about anything but laying out the next thing. However, I messed up. And one of the things that I messed up on is this right here. I don't like what I did as far as the drum line. I wanted to use this right here. So the main thing that you can do is press record and play start, and it will overdub over that track. And if you like everything that you hear, then you don't have to record anymore. Hit overdub so you don't overdub anything. And then you can experiment with other things, other elements. So I like this hi-hat right here. So let's go ahead and overdub that. Now, one thing I want to show you, if you do record and play start, nothing will play. Remember what I said, it's going to record over it. Now, the main thing that I want you to get used to is pressing this button right here, which is undo. So if I press undo and now press play start, I brought what I just recorded over on accident back. So that is one unique thing. If you like that and you wanted to record over it, or let's say you did something and you want to redo it, you would press shift, which is this button right here, and then undo, where you have the red writing where it says redo. Let's go ahead and record by pressing overdub and play start this time. And you'll see it being represented when you flash and play start, because play start plays it from the beginning. And we're going to use this hi-hat right here. And as you can see, timing correct kept it on par. There is an easier way to do this. Like how I just did those hi-hats. Maybe I just want it to be constant, but I don't want to do so much finger tapping or finger drumming. Let's introduce you to note repeat. So to use note repeat, what I want to show you is the shift button. Yet again, the shift button allows you to have access to a shift feature when you press this note repeat button right here. So when you press note repeat, it will latch to the screen. Now, if I was to do the exact opposite, and if I press note repeat and pressed it on, it will only stay on the screen as long as I keep my finger there. You can also double tap and it will do whatever shift that's under there. And that works for every button that has red writing on the bottom of it. However, let's go ahead and do note repeat. And now we'll do overdub and play start. So I don't want that. Remember, what I can do is hit undo. And now what I'll do is go through the different time signatures. So we have 1/8, 1/4, 1/16. That's what we were in on accident. And 132, 164. From here, we have triplets too as well. So that's what that T stands for. When we use triplets, it sounds like this right here with the hi-hat pad. So if I turn it off, and then if I was to do 1/16, 132, 164, you hear that. I know it's a little loud, but bear with me here. So let's turn it off, and we're going to record that in. Let's go ahead and press overdub and play start. 2, 3, 4. And everything that I did on the screen will play back. Now, let's talk about another feature, as we will keep note repeat on. But as a note, make sure that you set it back to 1/16, because if you do not, then when you have timing correct on, everything will be set to the grid just that way. So make sure that you do not have it on the time signature that you have last. Just keep it back on 1/16 and it will quantize perfectly. I like that hi-hat pattern, but there is one thing that I know a lot of people would have a question about. Well, let's access 16 levels right here, where it's called 16 level on the modern day MPC. So when we press this 16 level button, we're greeted with this screen right here where it says active, and then it has the pad, and then original pad, and so forth. But there's a type feature right here. So right now it's in tune. So if we want to do lower hi-hats or whatnot, we would just adjust it accordingly. So if you go to original pad, you can get lower octaves, but there's other things that you could do. You can do velocity. You can affect, this is how velocity would sound like. So I'm hitting the pads right now, and you can hear the velocity change. You can do filters. You can do layer, attack, decay, and probability, where the probability will change while you're doing whatever in note repeat. That can be very useful, as well as ratcheting. Let's go ahead and exit out of 16 level. Let's go over here to tune, because that's what we want. And then we'll put some triplets, 132 or 1/8. So let's go ahead and do that. Overdub, play start. Let's get it. And set it back to 1/16. Let's go ahead and get out of note repeat. Note repeat is off. And now let's talk about another feature, which is exploding your drums that you did on one track. So on every modern day MPC, we have a feature called exploding drums. And the main thing that you want to do is go to your track and this pencil sign. Once you hit this pencil sign, then you're greeted with all different kinds of options. But what we're looking for is the explode option. So exploding the tracks will explode every track that you just laid down into individual tracks. So let's press explode. And now you'll see that we have new tracks. And they're all separate now. So if I go solo and play start, you hear just the claps, the hi-hats, and the kicks. And this is useful for when you want to get to the exporting side of it and you have stems, but we'll talk about that later as well. Let's go to track number 5, and now we'll talk about laying down some melodics. So what we're gonna do is go to this program button right here, which is the plugin program. On the MPC X SE, you have exclusive plugins that you can use. But if you are a MPC user, you have access to buying them as well. I just want to rock with them for this part of this track. You can use whatever plugin you want. From here, we have the plugin, which is called Fabric Excel. So we have a button over here called Program Edit. When we hit this Program Edit button, we are greeted with the screen that has the plugin on there. So we have the plugin UI in front of us. Now we can select presets. We can do it on the main screen as well, but now you have an idea where you can see all the plugins and stuff like that. On this main screen, you have different tabs where you can play with the settings and stuff like that, and it correlates to these cue links right over here. You have layers and so forth. It changes depending on which kind of plugin that you're using. I'm going to select a preset that I like. I'm going to select a piano. So let's go ahead and select the piano right here. I'm going to do it on the screen so you can see it, but you can also use your cursor buttons at the bottom that we was talking about earlier. Once we go into here, double tap, select piano, you can browse and so forth. So let's go to piano and let's select Studio Grand. This is how Studio Grand sounds like right here. You can press the pads. But let's go ahead and hit the main button again. Bring us back to the main screen, and we're gonna enter pad perform. So you can either tap on the screen to enter pad perform, or you can hit this button right here where it says pad perform. And it will bring into the screen right here where you can see a myriad of choices that you have to create a melody or a progression. We have chromatic, which sounds like this. We have note mode, which has your pads locked out like this. So you can only play the notes in the scale, which is now A major. You can also select the octave. So right now the octave is pretty low. I'm gonna select octave 0 and then A and then play it. And as you can see, as I go down, it gets lower. So if you have to go higher, then you can also use these pad banks too, and it will bring up the octave. We also have a chords mode where it plays chords. And you do not have to touch the screen. You can play it on your pads. We also have chromatic chords, which play chords, and you also have progressions too as well. So from progressions, we have a couple of progressions that I like as I go through them. You have some custom ones that you can make, or you can buy from people like us. Then you have a set of chords that you can go through, like gospel, which gospel will be the progression that we use. We'll go over here to gospel, or actually what I like the most, which is this right here, slow praise. How's that sound? We're gonna lay down a melody, and what we're gonna do is go over here to notes, and you can see that it switched to an A natural minor. Now we can lay out something. You can stay on the screen, but what I'll do as a good practice is I will go back to the main screen and then press record and play start. And everything is laid out. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and name this melody. So let's go ahead and take time to label our track, because you want to make sure that you have a good workflow so you don't get lost. So that's the piano melody. You can name it piano if you want. I just put in melody piano. I add piano to that word and boom, and hit do it. And now you have your track name. And let's go to another track where we'll lay down some chord progressions. So from here, we'll go to track number 6 and we'll use the exact same instruments, but we'll go into pad perform and then select progression again. And what we want to do is make sure that it is meshing with that main melody. All right, so that's cool. We can even go down an octave over here and I'll just press A. And then we'll just work with that. So let's go ahead and record that in. Now we'll press main. We're on track number 6. Record, play start. I don't like that, so let's go down an octave by using the pad bank. And if you don't like anything, of course, we can just do it again and we'll just play it like this. There's also another way that you can play it. Like I like this, but I'm gonna go ahead and get a little fancy and then go up the pad bank. And that way I can get a higher octave. So let's go ahead and do that. So record, play start, 2, 3, 4. Switch it. And there you go. You got a nice little trick that you just learned. Let's go ahead and name it chords. Let's go ahead and do some tracking. Bow. Yeah, there was a bit of a mistake. So how would you edit that? If you go over here, there is a tic-tac-toe sign, but it's really a grid sign. Now we're into the grid. The first feature that you need to know is how would you navigate your grid? So by default, you're navigating your grid because you're on this icon right here, which is a search icon. So we're searching for something. And then you see some of the chords. So how will we make this smaller? Well, it's kind of easy to do. All you have to do is a pinch, just like how you would do on your smartphone, and you can see the whole entire grid for what it is. You can see all of the other MIDI events that are in here, or on the piano roll rather, because this is the piano roll that's on the MPC. From here, we see some mistakes that we made, and mistakes were made and they will be made. We need to get to those. So how would we get to those? You would have to hit the selection tool. So if we hit the selection tool, we would hit the dead spot of the screen where the piano roll is. And what we need to do is access this part right here. So when we access this part, we see something different here. So what we need to do is select this. Let's go ahead and make this bigger so we can select it. And then we'll take the selection tool and we'll select all of those MIDI events. Once we select all those MIDI events, then the next thing you need to do is hit the shift button. When you hit the shift button, you will see different options like timing correct, cut, copy, paste, mute, solo. What we want to do is use cut in this instance here so we can get rid of the stuff that we don't want. If we see that there's still more stuff here, then we need to just go ahead and use the magnifying glass to search, and then we'll just go ahead and use the selection tool and do that. You can also delete stuff by using this eraser right here, and you can erase stuff. But it's just easier to go ahead and use the cut function by doing shift by that and selecting cut. If you want to draw in MIDI events, you would hit this pencil sign right over here, and then you can erase them too. So the next thing I want to do is show you how to edit in the piano grid. Well, we're in the piano grid right over here, and I see we got a little bit of something right there. Let's get rid of that. Let's do that right now. Let me show you what I just did. I'm gonna press shift right over here, the shift button, and then we're going to make sure that we're selected the right event. If we get any other events in there, And if you have to, you just pinch. And then now I will select it so it's a little easier to select. And then we'll hit cut and then we'll get rid of it. Let's go ahead and make this smaller and talk more about the piano roll. Now that we're in the piano roll or whatnot, or the grid on the MPC, then we can do a couple of things. What if we wanted to make this part right here smaller, right? We can make this smaller by going over to edit end. When we go to edit end, then we can use the data wheel, turn the data wheel to the left to make it smaller. Or we can turn it to the right and make it bigger. Let's go ahead and do that. You can also adjust the edit start and make it smaller. You can also nudge these events over if you want to nudge it over, and it's tied to the timing correct feature. So if you want to do that, you would just press shift and then go to TC, and then you can change the timing correct. You can even turn it off if you want to, and then you can nudge it off. You can also choose don't snap, which will do the exact same thing, and then you'll see that it's going over in smaller increments. I'm going to turn snap back on, and then just make sure that it's at the very beginning. You can also transpose stuff. If you want to transpose that part, you can choose to transpose up and down by selecting transpose. And then as you can see, you have information of where you were at. So if you need to play it and you see that it's wrong, then you can always go back. And once you're done, you can always go back to nudge or start end or whatever you want to do. The next thing in the piano roll that most people will want to know is, how would you change the velocity of chords? Remember, we have the selection tool on, so make sure that you understand that you need to unhighlight so you can change the velocity, or you can highlight one of these notes that you want to change the velocity to, and you can change the velocity to that one note. Or you can select them all, or whatever you want, and you can change them all at once. If you want to see more of the velocity or change anything else, you would go to the magnifying glass and then change them all at once. Make sure that you use the selection tool and to get out of anything that you highlighted, and then just go to the magnifying glass or whatever, or the pencil sign, and then you can draw whatever else that you want. Do it one at a time, or just group them together and do the exact same thing. So that's just one of the many ways that you can affect that. The other thing that I want to show you is you can have control over other elements too. If you hit this velocity sign, you can go over to probabilities. What probabilities can do is change the timing of when these notes come in. So if you have a particular note that you want to change, then you would select that note, and then you would change the probability of that note. What I'm gonna do is show it on a different track, so you can select the track and you don't have to get out of grid mode or whatever. And we have the probabilities of this piano right here. So let's go ahead and select the pianos that are in here. So just the melodics that we just did from the very track of number 5. And then we can just go ahead to the selection tool. Let's go ahead to the pencil sign and then draw in the probabilities of these notes. So what the probabilities are, the lower that you are, the more likely that it will not play. You hear how sometimes it plays the beginning, it won't. The main reason why you want to use probability is to give some different elements to your track every single time that you go through it on a cycle. And it will make it very unique. You can try it out on anything, hi-hats or whatever. I recommend on something where it is very syncopated, that you use probability to break up the monotony. The next thing that you can do is go over to ratchet. Ratchet is something that I would use more on hi-hats. So let's go over to a hi-hat track. Let's find a hi-hat track. Now we're on ratchet. When I go to this note right here, let's go ahead and select that. Let's deselect everything and then select it. Once you hear the hats, let's go ahead and solo that so we don't have everything else. You can select this one hat and you'll hear that the ratcheting will turn up. So if you don't want to do any timing correct or note repeat, you can do it by hand as well. Yeah, it's something that's pretty cool to do. The next thing is volume and stuff like that, but that's it for the piano roll in a nutshell. better known as the grid on the MPC. So let's go ahead and lay down a bass line. Let's go to an empty track. So we have an empty track on number 7, and we'll just name it bass. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're organized. That's very important. Now that we have a bass, let's make sure it's unsoloed, because remember, we soloed it earlier, then we wouldn't be able to hear it. Let's hit this plus sign to bring up a new plugin program. In this new plugin program, we're going to use Fabric Excel, and we'll go and navigate with the data wheel. We can just go ahead and tap on this, and then we'll go to a category. We'll go to bass. So we'll go to synth sub bass, and we'll use subsign. From here, we'll just go to pad perform, and we'll set it up to note mode. And you can do this with 808s or anything like that. And now that we're in note mode, we're just hitting on the pad here, and we can just automatically be locked into the bass, and it will be tuned to the track. If we need any lower octaves, we can just go to the pad banks. Let's go ahead and lay something out. The next thing we're gonna do is increase the BPM. I think I'll make it a little bit more snappier. We can go and do this right here. We established the bass, but the bass isn't aggressive enough. So what we're gonna do is add effects, and I'm gonna show you how to do so. We have this eyeball sign right here, and this eyeball sign will expand the screen and give you a slot. Now, you can have different effects in different areas. So the main effect that we wanna affect is the program itself, and be able to add a distortion. You would hit this empty area where it says insert, and then it will bring you into your 4 inserts. There are multiple amount of effects. You can select it by touching the screen, or you can hit the enter button on the cursor, and you will have the ability to see what effects you have. Now, from here, you see that we have dynamics, delay, reverb, EQ, filter, harmonics, modulation, vocal, and vintage effects. So what we want to do is go over here to harmonics and select distortion. So when we go over here, we see air distortion. And when we go to air distortion and press select, then we can hit this pencil sign, and we can open up the menu for that plugin that we're using on this track. So now when we listen to it and press play start, we can mess with these effects. Now there's, of course, this area right here where it has presets, and you can always check there for presets, and you can preview them. I like the total distortion, but I'll just go back to initial, and this is where I want to show you a couple of things. If you pay attention to your cue links, then you'll see that you have the same options that are on the screen. Unlike the MPC 1 and the Live, you have access to all of your cue links at once, and they'll be labeled over here. So the main thing I want to do is mess with this knob right here, which affects the drive. And then we can also mess with the mix. You're gonna mess with the output. And then we can go over here to the tone area and mess with that. So this is one of the big advantages to having the MPC X or the SE. Keep in mind that you have these cue links over here, and pay attention to these cue links, because you don't necessarily have to just touch the screen or anything like that. You have a clear, concise workflow right in front of you, and that can be applied anywhere in this lessons that you will get in the future. Once you're done messing with the effect or whatnot, you can just hit the main button, and it will bring you back to the main screen. And if you don't want to mess with anything else, then you would just hit hide, and then you will have your screen restored back to normal. Now that we lay down a pretty decent foundation for a track, what we need to do is talk about mixing. Hit this channel mixer button right here, and then you'll have access to the channel mixing. From here, you can actually mess with these cue links. Again, it's exclusively to the MPC X. This workflow is phenomenal. What we'll do is just play the track, and we can see the different tracks. And what we can do is mess with these knobs and turn up the volume. And then we can mess with other elements too, like the bass. I'm cool with the bass being right here at 0. And then I'll turn up the drum. Now, what if we wanted to mess with the drums individually? Remember, let's go back and hit the main button and we'll go over to the drums. Now, the drums themselves are muted, but you have access to the pad mixer, where if we press this button right here, then we'll have the same access to the drums that we have that are hitting. Since we already exploded the tracks, we can go into the individual tracks over here. Let's have it in solo. And I'm good with the kick, but those hi-hats, they need to go down, so I'll just hit the pad mixer, and then you'll see it right here. And keep in mind, Q links. This is why we're at this view right here and not closer. We have access to turning it down. Because they are aggravating. The hi-hats are aggravating when they play in that. So, and we can mix other elements of this track, of course. I mean, you can just go to individual parts. So let's go into, you know, clap. The clap is cool, but if I was to go in the pad mixer, you can see the clap right over here and so forth. And you can also see it being represented on this peak meter right here. So let's go and solo. There's a solo button right here. I just realized that. MPC X, it'd be working, baby. That's basically about it as far as mixing goes. You can mix any element that you want, either by channel, you can see it in your channel, or your pad mixer, and it's simple. And then we just go back out and continue the process. So let's go ahead and add another element to this track. I'll go to an empty track over here, track number 8, and I'll keep it on the plugin program for right now. What I'll do is hit the plus sign. Remember, the plus sign is your friend if you want to continue to work with different plugins. You could change your plugins or whatnot. I'm going to stick to Fabric Excel, and then I'll go and pick another preset. So I have this magic box here, and I don't want to play any of this stuff in. What I want to do is just go to Pad Perform, and what we're going to do is select progressions, and I will show you something cool. Arpeggios work like this on the MPC X and so forth. The first thing we need to do is go into note repeat. Let's press shift and note repeat to latch, and then we're going to go into ARP. From here, you'll see the ARP selection right here is called an arpeggiator, and then we can do a myriad of things. I did progressions instead of anything else because I wanted to make sure that I have some cool stuff. And you know, you can preview it by just pressing play start on your MPC. And we have a couple of things that we could do. We could do latch notes, and you can hit the pad and it will continue to play. You can see that both my hands are right here and it's continuing to play. So that's what latch note does. We can change the speed. And you can see how it could be useful during playback or during the recording process. You also have different ARP modes, of course. You can use the data wheel to see. You can choose rhythm. You can do pattern. You can change the pattern too as well. But if you go into pattern mode, just be careful because pattern modes are built-in patterns, and they'll take it out of the scale. So that's the one thing I will say. What we're gonna do is select ARP, and then we're gonna go down again. You can also swing it too as well, or change the note length. and you can swing and it'll sound like this. And you know, it's cute, but we don't want that inside of our arpeggiation. Not right now, at least not on this track. You have art patterns where if you select the art pattern, you have up, down, down, up, down, and a myriad of other things. So if we did diverge, converge, it can give you a different kind of vibe. And also octaves. And you can change the variation. So you can do variations 1 through 8. So I'll do variation 6 with octave 4, then we'll just lay it out and I'll go through the arpeggiator with it open right now and I will record it in. So let's go ahead and do that. Record and play start, of course. That was a little too wild for me. So let's go ahead and do that again. 2, 3, 4. And now you have recorded some arps in. Remember, you can always do it again if that wasn't your vibe. For me, I liked it a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and do a little just normal stuff, maybe down. And we'll go to variation and change it to like normal again. So let's go ahead and try that, and we'll mess with the different time signatures right here. 1, 2. And I'll turn off metronome enable so we don't have to click track. So now that we have that, there's some couple of other things that I want to show you. I've already showed you how to add effects and stuff like that, but there's a particular effect that I want to work with. What I'll do is go right back into the eyeball sign and go into insert, and then I will go into the effects, double tap on the screen, how you would on your smartphone or pad, iPad or whatever, and then you would just go into something like a modulation. We have half speed here. So what I'm gonna do is add it into the track and I'll show you what it looks like on the screen. So there's a couple of things with half speed that I want to dictate. So let's go to main and we'll solo that particular sound and we'll just name it ARP so that we won't get lost later on. Remember, we wanna keep good habits going. From here, we'll just press play start. So we have it on, you can see it's already affecting it. So if I was to hit stop, it'll play at its normal speed. But if I add it in, you can hear that it's slowed down a little bit. Now, what I want to do in this instance here is have this mixed in. So what I can do is I can select mix, or you can use your Q links over here and then mix it in. You can change the loop. And so forth. What I want to do is simple. Let's go back into the main screen, hit that main button, and we're going to go ahead and hit this right here so we can automate it. So with automation on, we can automate this particular track or other elements. This is how you would do automation. Once we get into here, we're going to go back into air half speed. And then we're gonna hit the pencil sign we can mix stuff in. So the first thing I want to do is start and stop. So what I'm going to do is turn it off right now. Then I'll hit play start and the automation will begin. Then I'll mess with knobs. And as you can see, the automation has started. And you can see it on the screen. And that's how you do automation. It's very simple. So let's hit stop and then let's go to main, and we want to turn it off because we don't want to continuously do anything with automation on. And if you want to do it per track, you can always do it right here and it can write to that track. Well, let's go ahead and finish off this track with these strings here. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to lay it out. Now that we have that laid out here, what I'm going to do is show you something pretty simple and easy to do, which is to lay out your first track using track mutes. The first thing we need to do is go up here to this sequence, and then we'll just name this main sequence. I can just go over here and just name it that. So here it goes, main, boom. And now it's called main sequence. Now that we're in this pencil sign right here on the sequence part of the main screen, we will go over here to copy sequence. So when we go over here to copy sequence, we see that it says sequence 1 is main, and then it says over contents of sequence number 2, which is unused, and it says sequence name. We're going to name this full beat. So let's go ahead and type that in, and then we'll be good to go. So when we hit do it, it will be there, and then we'll have to hit do it again so it can be on that own entire individual sequence here. The next thing we need to do, since we're on this screen, is to hit double length. So we're going to hit this 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and we have 64 bars. You can do as many bars as you want, but I just find it easy to do 64 bars in this instance here. What we're going to do is go into track mutes. So how do we get to track mutes? Well, it's a button right here. As you can imagine, the MPC X is complete like that. Once we hit that, then we see all of the tracks that we can mute. So if we was to play with that, I'm going to play with it on the screen here, but it is represented on the pads itself, as you can see right here. So if I was to play with the pads in theory, or on the screen, then you can see I can control the mute. What we're gonna do is lay out the whole entire beat using the track mutes. Now, of course, it will take a little bit of practice. You will have to figure out what works for you the best, but yeah, it will be easy for you to do. So to do this, press record and play start, and then you can do it. If you don't like what you've done, you would hit undo, and then everything is back to normal. So what I want to do is start with just the piano melody. And we'll just make this track immersive. might be a little hard, but you know, we have to go through this process. Sometimes you have to redo it. Pouring on in. It's playing back, and you can just get out that and just enjoy your track. Now that we have laid down a full beat, that's basically something that you could do, and what I want to show you is how to save it next. Saving a beat is pretty simple. You can do saving a beat two different ways on here. And the main way I'll show you is by hitting this menu button right over here, and then you would hit save. So save will bring up these different things. So what we want to do is save it as a project so we can work on it later, just in case we want to work on it later, but you have other options too, like save as project, save as, save plug-in program, just in case you was tweaking with a program effects rack if you wanted to make an effects rack or save your effects rack for later so you can recall it. So you can save a sequence. You can do an audio mix down, which basically makes a 2-track so that you can listen to it anywhere else, you know, as a WAV file or MP3 file or an Ableton Live set so that you can open it up in Ableton Live. What we're going to do is save project here, and we'll save it on our SD card slot, which is why this has the ejection sign by it. On here, I would recommend that you just make a folder, and how you would do that is go over here to new folder, and you can make a folder. You can just title it whatever you want, and then you can save inside of that folder just like that. There are other options too. If you hit shift, then you can see some other things too. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go ahead and just save it into my MPC song projects. So I'm gonna go over here, navigate into here, and then I'll choose a file name. I'll name it Traptendo Masterclass X, because I already have other Masterclass stuff in here. Once we hit do it, then we can save right into that folder. It will save, and it'll pull all the information, the project in there. And then once you go out of that and you hit the main button, then you'll see Traptendo or the name, whatever you named it, and the name right there so that you know that it's saved, and then you can always go back to it a little later. However, what I want to do is show you how to lay out different sequences so we can do what we call song mode. We can go back to our main. Remember, our main is this right here. It is totally different from the other sequence. That is something that you need to know so that you understand the basic concept of sequencing. You can have sequences that are in different BPMs. It's up to you, but the main thing that you want to do is make sure that you name all the tracks. So I've already messed up on track number 9. I have it as track number 9 instead of strings. Do not change that after the fact. That's why you should always name your tracks so this next part won't get messed up. From here, what we're gonna do is create different sequences. I have the main sequence, keep that sequence the same. Do not use this sequence at all other than what we're doing right now. And since we're doing copy sequence, I'll name this intro. And we're gonna copy that over, hit do it, and then hit do it, it'll be on sequence number 3. Then we're gonna go right back over to main, and then we're gonna hit this pencil sign, and then we're gonna make a track called verse. So we're gonna create a verse track. Then hit do it again. And from here, we'll go all the way back again to the main, and then we're gonna create another one called hook. So that will be the hook or the chorus or whatever you like to call it. We're gonna write back again, and then we're on main. So that's why I say keep the main the same. And we're gonna make a bridge because I'm pretty sure everybody wants to know how you can flip into a bridge, right? We'll hit do it and then do it again. And we have a bridge. Now you can make an outro or something like that if you want to continuously change it, but I'm cool with whatever it is. What we're gonna do is mess with the intro. So the intro, if I want to keep it simple or a buck or whatnot, I'll just go ahead and just go to track mutes and I will set it up the way I want it. So I just want this to be like this right here. And just like we did before, where we recorded in the track mutes, what you want to do is simply hit record. So let's hit record and play start. And as you can see, it recorded everything in. So now that we have our intro, we're good to go. The next thing we need to do is go to our next sequence. And this one will probably be about 16 bars, right? Because it's a verse. Or how many bars you want to set up. I'll hit the pencil sign and I'll hit double length. And it was already at 4 bars, so it's 8. So the next one will be 16. And as you can see, we have 16 bars, okay? Or matter of fact, I think what it should be is 8. Matter of fact, I take that back. What we're gonna do is undo. I'm gonna undo it again. We'll have it as a 4 bar. What we're gonna do is create a verse 2. So what I'll do from here is just go ahead and select, and then I'll make a verse 2, boom, and we'll have another sequence because we're gonna do a bridge, right? I'll go back to verse 1, then I'll do the exact same thing that I did for the recent track where I did the track mutes and then record that. So I have this. Just like I did with the intro, I just recorded in some track mutes. Now I'll just go over to another sequence. I'll go over to verse 2, and then I'll just record what I think will be good for the verse 2. What I'll do is I'll go into main, I'll make that 8. So let's go ahead and do verse 2, 8. Then we'll record whatever into that and go into track mute, and I'll just find what will work best for it. Simple as that. So I'll do that. And everything is good to go. So that is my verse. What I'll do is go over to hook, and because that's the simple one to do, because we'll do something different with the bridge, and we'll make that 8 bars, boom. I'll just go into track mute. So let's go over here to track mute over here, and as simple as apple pie, we'll set it up for success. Let's go ahead and record that in. So let's take that part out, and boom. and everything is recorded. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and select bridge, but instead of going and recording track mutes right now, what we're gonna do is access the main part of this track, and we're gonna see what elements that we can change up so that it has a different feeling from everything else. What I'm gonna end up doing is going over here to the pad perform and making sure that I have some other stuff. Instead of us having the piano play this little solo right here, so we're gonna do note repeat, go in arp. Instead of us have it going down, we'll have it go up and change it up something, you know. Instead of doing that, we'll play. So I have some stuff here. I'll probably change the octave a little bit. And let's go and make it a little less wild on the variation. I have something here that I like. And what I'll do is I'll play it in over that track. I'm gonna make sure that everything is fine. Then I will go over here and just mute other elements of the track so I can figure something else out. Make sure that I have the main track that I'm working on not muted. And then we'll go back into note repeat. Go back into art. And play it in. So here we go. And if I don't like anything, I'll just go back into it. So let's go ahead and do that again. 4. Let's go ahead and make that 8 bars. So 8 bars, double length. Then we'll have something. Then I'll go back into art and record it in there. I'll just go over to the next track, then go from chords. I'll unmute that track. So let's go ahead and enter that in. And so. And what I'll do is I'll just, to make it a little different, I'll probably select a different piano. Maybe I'm going a little too wild on this. I think you should stick with the same preset just in case things don't pan out the way that they should. So be like me, but don't. We'll record this in. Now that we have that, we can go and do something different with the bass. Sometimes you will have to mess with the bass again, or actually just set it in note mode because we're in note. I like that, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's do it again. I actually like that. I'm cool with that. And then just move on to the track until you got something else. Let's go and, you know, set things up again with the arpeggio. So, you know, let's go to the arpeggio. And we can just set it up. And let's go ahead and set it to something a little bit more. I like that. Set it back to success here. Now for the next part of the bridge, because I'm making it overly complicated, I'll just go over here and just set it up for success. I'll just make sure and make a note that it's 8 bars. Just make sure that you know what you got and what you're trying to accomplish. So from here, just record it in. So I don't like that, so I'll undo that. And then I'll just hit the bass because I like that part. And let's add everything else in. And now we have a bridge, finally, after all that work. So the next thing, just go over here to your verse 2. What do you like about your verse 2? And I think I've already did that. So now I'm gonna make a note of that. And now let's work on the hook. Of course, the hook was like this. Make sure that you review everything before you go. If anything needs to be changed, then it should be changed properly and respectfully. So after all that, we have a complete joint that we can work with here. So what we can do is go into menu, and then we're going to select song mode. Once you're in song mode, you need to hit the record button because we need the record button to enter all the stuff into the song. From song mode, what we need to do is this right here. You can do this on the pads or you can do it on the screen. So we'll do an intro that is 4 bars. We'll do a verse. And then since it's 4 bars, we'll do it again. So it's 2 bars. And then verse 2, which is the last part of the verse, which equals up to 16 bars. If you want that, then we'll do a hook, which is 8 bars. Then the bridge is 8 bars. Then we'll do a verse 2 into the hook to a verse and then a verse. And we're good to go. So after all that is done, hit record again to turn it off, and then hit play start, and it'll play from the very beginning. See, it's playing the same verse again, and then it'll move down to this part right here. It's gonna play that. just going through the cycle again. And there you go. You've laid out your first track in song mode and you're good to go. The other thing that I want to show you is this right here. The importance of song mode is extremely important for this reason. So if you go over here to export, you don't have the ability to separate your tracks. And you can be able to print out a 2-track, yes, but you won't be able to print out a full-on stems and stuff like that. So what I want to do is show you something that is very important, and that is converting a whole entire song back into a sequence. So converting a song back into a sequence is pretty simple. You would just hit this button right here, and then you can use your track that is empty, or rather a sequence that is empty, not a track. And you have 2 different statuses. You can include the mutes that you have done, or you can ignore the mutes. You hit do it, and you go into the main screen, then you have this new one right over here. And if you have done everything correctly, it will play like it was in the sequence. So this is song mode right here. Yeah, this beat is kind of ugly. I don't like it, but hey. And we're just gonna listen to it again. And everything seems fine. We're just gonna keep on listening until the bridge. Everything seems fine on the hook, even though I'm not proud of this beat. Hey. Then we'll hear. Everything's good. So everything is there. Now, what I'm gonna do is show you something that you need to know, and that is going into menu. Hitting the menu button will bring you to this screen right here, and we'll go over how you would export a beat. You would hit save, and now you would hit audio mix down. When we're looking at this screen right here, you can see a couple of things. You see start bar, and then you see end bar 60. That is the beginning to the end. And we can do the audio tails. What audio tail means that it will play afterwards, so any effects or anything like that, it'll elongate it some more. What you can do is turn it to 0, so that way if you are mixing or something like that, it'll stop, and it makes it easier to loop too as well. So if you are a loop-based producer, you want to make loops and sample packs, I will put an audio tail at 0 seconds. You have stereo outputs. You can have it output to 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. But I recommend that you do output 1 and 2. You can do separate programs, but the most important one is explode tracks, which allows you to have separate tracks. If you want to export it and put it into a DAW and mix it, or you want to give it to a mixing engineer, then they need to have the exploded tracks, like how it would be in any DAW. And that is the importance of doing stuff in song mode and converting it back to a sequence, just in case you work like that. You have file formats. You can change the file formats. You have different file formats like WAV, AIFF, MP3, FLAC, and OGG. I usually go with WAV files or whatnot. I call them WAV files. I know that pisses people off, but whatever. You can keep your main inserts. It means that it will process and everything will be on those stems. If you don't want that, or the engineer doesn't want that, then you can click off of that and it will be the dry stems itself. You can change the bit depth from 24 to 16 to 32 afloat. 24 is cool. You have sample rate. You can change the sample rate as well. You have a myriad of choices right here in standalone. I just usually keep it at 44.1. Hit export. If you have a folder of your beats, you should make sure that you have a folder of your beats, and make sure that you select your beats and whatnot, and then you can export it in here. Once you do that, then it'll go through exporting the track for you, and then we'll be back momentarily. Everything is done. Then we can always go and hit the browse button. Once we hit the browse button, we can go into places where we saved it, and we can go right over here and navigate to that particular folder where we have our beats. So Akai Beats will be the one, and we can go into our beats that we have here. Please excuse me, as I do have a lot of beats. As you would imagine, I make a lot of beats every single day. It's important that you check the file afterwards, because as you can hear, there's nothing playing. That is one of the things that could be an issue when you are exporting your beats. So what you just do is just go back in here and then just go to audio mix down, and then just go and export the beat again into that folder, save it. Are you sure you want to overwrite? Yes, because there's nothing there. And we'll see if it plays this time. We're back into that same folder. Now it plays this time around, so everything is good. That's why you should always check afterwards. You can hit stop and it'll stop playing it. But now you know how to bounce down a track. We're back into the menu screen right here. And what we're gonna do is go back into save, audio mix down, because I wanna go ahead and show you how explode tracks work. And we selected explode tracks, which means that it's in stems. You can export returns as well, save project preview and so forth. But what we're gonna do is just go to export. And from here, you can create a new folder and then put stuff into that folder itself, so that you don't have to worry about the files being scattered. Let's just go ahead and just put Masterclass X or whatnot. So we'll just type in Masterclass X, and then we'll have the folder right here. And I don't know why I just played my loop, but other than that though, we have Masterclass X, and then we can just hit save, and then it's going to go through that process and export those tracks one by one, okay? And now that you see Masterclass X here, if we go into the folder, then you can hear like all the audio tracks and stuff like that for what they are. What I want to do here is show you how to add lo-fi to your master track and the different kinds of lo-fi. So we have that track right here. What you need to do is hit the eyeball sign and go into the crown sign, and that is your master track. So from here, you would just go into insert and no effect, just click on it, and then we can go and navigate towards the harmonics area where we have Air Flavor or Air Flavor Pro if you have paid for it. But Air Flavor is a lo-fi plugin. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into insert number 2, because there is another lo-fi plugin that you can use on either the master track or whatever tracks that you want, and that is Air Lo-Fi. Last but not least, there's another lo-fi plugin somewhat. It is called Vintage Effects, and then you have different vintage effects that you can use. Like you have MPC 3000, MPC 60, which is the 12-bit MPC, the SB 1200 ring and SB 1200, and we'll add that SB 1200 in there. I'll turn them off. You can turn off your effects by hitting the off button. I'm pretty sure everybody knew that, right? But let's go into Air Flavor. So now that we're in Air Flavor, we can do some stuff. So this is how the track sounds like. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit, and you can mess with the different timbres. I'm gonna turn it up now. You have different timbres. You have timbre depth. And you can continue to mess with different ones. You can add distortion, noise, flutter, and monofile. There are also presets as well. And so forth. So that's Air Flavor. It's okay. I like it a little bit, but what I like the most is Air Lo-Fi, because it gives you more of that bit crush, bit rate stuff like from old school drum machines. You have bit depth on here. Let's just play the track, and I'm going to reduce the bit depth, but it's directly correlated with sample rate. So let's hear that. press it. But where the fun starts is in this particular tab right here where it says distortion. So what I like to do is add a little bit of clipping, rectify, and noise modulation. You'll hear the difference here, so I won't talk too much. So now that we have a bass, this is what I usually do with my lo-fi right here, is add in air lo-fi, which dramatically changes the track, its overall timbre or its overall transient when it's coming out. It also sounds good when you are extending out your tracks too as well for it beyond the elements of that. So let's go ahead and play with it. Play the track with it on. Now off. Now I'm going to play it on and off at the same time, so pay attention to the screen. On. Off. But it doesn't stop there. If you want to go deeper into detail with your lo-fi, I recommend that you go to this tab right here where it says LFO and envelope. So with LFO and envelope, you can actually switch how the lo-fi progresses in the track. You have sine wave, you have random, Morse code. What I usually do is random because usually we want something to have its own unique texture as it progresses. So let's go ahead and hear it with random. And let's add some depth, because depth will change it a lot. But it also gets more complex when you add the envelope modulation to it. So let's go ahead and mess with depth, and make sure that you keep in mind that you're looking at your cue links instead of just messing with the screen or tapping one part of the screen and messing with the data wheel. It's more immersive when you mess with your 16 cue links. And as you can guess, if you have the attack all the way down, that means the lo-fi is introduced immediately. While if you have it like this, it is introduced slowly into the actual track. And release means the same thing. So if you had the release all the way down, it means it will stop immediately. While the fizz, if you have it all the way to the right, then that means it will slowly progress out. You know what I'm saying? So basically, that's how that works in a nutshell. Do what you want. This is my lo-fi of choice. Everybody has their own personal preference. And of course, if we go to presets, there is a couple of presets as well that you can use on your own here. Exiting out and turning this off, let's go ahead and introduce you to the next lo-fi, which is the vintage effects. And this is the SP1200. There's nothing much that you can do on the screen. That's how it sounds like. But the more distinctive sound would be the other ones that you have over here, like the SP1200 ring. And let me go ahead and go back into here so I can get it to work. Boom. And SPE. And from here, it's cool, but it's not my cup of tea. But that's just something I will show to you for referencing points. What I want to do now is just go back into the menu. So I'll hit the menu button. Then I will show you some preferences that you should make note of. So in preferences, there are a couple of things that will be clutch, especially if you make beats every single day. So the biggest thing that I want to note is going into hardware. So when you go into hardware, there are a couple of features that you want to make sure that you turn on. Well, let's say that you see this VU meter here and we had this track playing. It's not working because we're on the screen, but it needs to be on the current program. But you can also choose the VU meter to be on the source, which is output 1 and 2. Now you can monitor the whole track there and you can see what you need to mix and stuff like that. It is active, not passive. So if you have it all the way down or something like that, then it still will play this exact same way. Then there's screen dimming and then there's screen brightness. Like you can change the screen brightness to day and night. And usually when you set it to night, it makes it a little easier for you to see, or it won't be as bright. On the MPC X, the screen is quality. That's one thing I just want to point out. You have sequencer too, where you can change some of your features here. I would recommend that you have instant track mutes on, especially for the next thing that we're going to talk about for sampling, because it will come clutch, especially with track muting and stuff like that. It will stop things from playing after the fact. Make sure that everything like this is checked if you like the workflow. And there's display resolution, which is 96 ppqn, and that's more like the older MPCs, like the 3000, just for those people that wanted to know if it has the same feel or workflow as the 3000. Indeed it does. Then you have project defaults, where you can change your project defaults. Like for me, my BPM of choice or my tempo of choice that I like to work with is in the 100s versus doing 120, which is the default global tempo. I changed it to that. You can change it whatever you want. The default sequencing bars, like you can change it instead of it being 2 all the time to 4 or whatever you want. I'll put mine on 4 because I need to do that. And then you can choose which one of your favorite plugins that you like to use all the time for when you start a project. So when you start a new plugin, you can choose between Fabric Excel or any of the plugins that you have. Of course, I have every single last one of them. So I choose Fabric Excel because that's the mainstay for me as far as production. Jura, definitely a really good plugin, and Mini D is another good plugin, but I'll just keep it on Fabric Excel for right now. Those are things that are key. You can go into your general settings. You can also, like I was showing you, if you want to be in a certain mode, you can change it to vintage mode, where it could be like the MPC 3000. You can have it as the MPC 60 and so forth. I don't necessarily use that because I just want my stuff to sound as clear as possible, and that's the reason why I got a modern day MPC in the first place. You can change the addition to autoplay on or off, or you can change a lot of that stuff. The biggest thing though is audio warp algorithm. As we go into sampling, you want to make sure that it is on Pro 10 by default. It should always be on Pro 10 anyways, but there's another mode where it takes less CPU, but it won't have quality time stretch if you do that, okay? That's pretty much it as far as going through your preferences and changing them up for when you want to create stuff. But if you want to work with MIDI and stuff like that, some important stuff that you need to know is enable MIDI ports when discovered should be on. MIDI controller mode output, MPC-A. You can change it to whatever you want. We'll talk more about that as the lessons progress.